Donald Trump has been very busy the last couple of days too, not just ordering Kristi Noem to attack Harvard, but I don't know if you happen to see the report in the Washington Post. It was based on an initial scoop by Politico. Donald Trump yesterday fired 400 staff members from the National Security Council. 400. First of all, during the George W. Bush administration, when I was interacting with the National Security Council on a daily basis, there were like 35.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I can't believe. I mean, my father once had dealings with the NSC, and I don't remember it being this massive office.
It wasn't.
What happened here?
It ballooned during the Obama administration. Trump shrunk it in his first term. It ballooned again during Biden, and Trump got rid of just about everybody. So they're not really fired. You don't really work for the NSC. You do a rotation to the NSC. So almost everybody at the NSC is really an employee of the CIA, the State Department, the Pentagon, or the Treasury Department. And you're there to coordinate policy. And that's been sort of the raison d'etre of the NSC. It's to coordinate foreign intelligence and defense policy. Donald Trump has a completely different view of what the NSC should be. He believes that the NSC should be a personal advisor to the president, period. We don't need a shadow State Department, a shadow Defense Department, a shadow CIA to coordinate policy, he says. We need somebody who can oversee policy at a 30,000-foot level and advise the president. And I have to say, I agree with Donald Trump on this. It's just like the ODNI.
They'll get rotated back, right? To where?
Yeah. They just that's what I mean. They weren't really fired. They just rotate back to their home agencies. I agree with Donald Trump on this. Just because if you look at the precedent that was set by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, when ODNI was first created, it had about a dozen employees. Well, now it's got like 4,000 employees.
That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's insane.
It's not, even if we assume they all play an important role, the fact that they grew so big so fast is something that ought to raise flags.
Yeah, it ought to. You've got these shadow organizations. How many CIAs do you need? How many State Departments do you need? Why do you have multiple people making foreign policies? Isn't that what the Secretary of State is for? Why do you have people second guessing the Pentagon? Right? It should be a civilian leadership and the military Joint Chiefs.
The United States, is the United States government, to me, seems to be increasingly taking on the Byzantine organizational characteristics that we used to look at in the Iranian government, which for a long time, not only under the current government, but even under the Shah, has always had these overlapped, like Venn diagram on Venn diagram on Venn diagram, and it's always been frustrating for some people to make deals with Iran because you shake hands with someone who's important, but maybe he's not the guy. And maybe there is the guy. There's 4 the guys or whatever.
Right.
And it's hard to identify who they are. And that's what this government is getting to be like. It reminds me of this crazy story. I don't know if you remember this. The Village Voice broke it years ago during the Gulf, right after the Gulf War, about how this all started. And the Voice's reporting was pretty solid, that basically in the summer of 1990, Saddam Hussein was getting increasingly perturbed about Kuwait's side drilling into Iraq's oil reserves. And at the same time, also perturbed because he was part of OPEC, and the Kuwaitis were undercutting the cartel's prices on the international market. And it's like, obviously that undercuts the idea of a cartel. And so is to set prices, and you can't have anybody underset. So the Saudis and the other members of OPEC leaned on Saddam and said, these little pipsqueaks, they're in your backyard. That's like historically your sphere of influence. Like, swat them down, make them stop. And so Saddam apparently personally called the State Department in like July or August of 1990, and Pardon?
Close. He summoned April Glaspie, who was the U.S. ambassador to Iraq. And in fact, April's mom lived with her in Baghdad. She was quite elderly, and they were going on vacation the next day. And so she reported to James Baker, the Secretary of State, that she had been summoned by Saddam, and she was going to go see him. A bunch of us analysts at the CIA were huddled around the computer in the operations center, waiting for the no disk cable, the no distribution cable to come back, eyes only for the Secretary of State, which of course means the Secretary of State and the CIA operations center. And so this is where the major disconnect was. Baker wrote back to April and told her that the U.S. policy was that the United States will not take a position on Arab border conflicts, because everybody assumed he was just going to take that little 2-kilometer strip that was the southernmost tip of the Rumaila oil field where the Kuwaitis were slant drilling. Saddam assumed that the U.S. knew he was going to take the whole of Kuwait.
Now,
and
what's
so
part of the issue that a lot of people in Washington were on vacation at this time?
Oh yeah, everybody was on vacation. It was the 2nd of August.
Right. So no one was around. President George H.W. Bush presumably was in Kennebunkport. So that you couldn't get a basically
actually he was.
Go ahead.
He flew back. This kind of made my career early on. We wrote a paper on June 30th saying we believe Saddam Hussein is going to invade Kuwait and he's going to take the whole thing. And the reason we did that is because amongst ourselves, we just could not agree if he was going to take all of Kuwait or just the Rumaila oil field. So we sent a cable to the U.S. Defense Attaché in Baghdad, and we said, this weekend, do you mind driving to the border and then driving back and just tell us what you see? So he drove down to the border with Kuwait, went back to Baghdad to the office and sent us a cable and said that literally the entire Iraqi military is driving to Kuwait. So we published a paper on June the 30th, 1990, saying Saddam Hussein is going to invade Kuwait and he's going to take the whole damn thing. Well, April had her meeting with Saddam on, I think it was July the 31st. And said the U.S. doesn't take a position on Arab border disputes. Saddam saw that as the green light because he believed that we believed that he was going to take the whole thing, and we had no objection to it. And so he did. He took the whole thing. That morning, we knew it was coming that night, the night of August 1st, U.S. time, August 2nd, Kuwaiti time. And I got to the office very early, and when I got there, my boss said, don't take off your jacket. We're going to go to the White House. It was like 6:30 in the morning. And I had never been to the White House. I was 25 years old, and I had only been at the agency for 9 months. So we get in the car, we go to the White House, a Marine escorts us into the Oval Office. It's the president, the vice president, the national security advisor, the CIA director, my boss, and me. So we wait for the president to sit down. Everybody else sits down. And the president says, well, now what do we do? And it took me a second, but I said, well, Mr. President, as you know, Iraqi troops crossed the border into Kuwait at 2:00 in the morning, and they overthrew the Kuwaiti government. And they installed a puppet government led by Dr. Ahmed Khatib. We actually know a lot about Ahmed Khatib. He graduated with a medical degree from the American University of Beirut, where he was roommates with George Habash, and together they created the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Wow. And Dan Quayle goes, Jesus Christ, like that. And we just sat there all looking at each other. Well, it turned out later that afternoon, something famous happened. Margaret Thatcher called Bush and said something that has become well known in international affairs. She said, now's not the time to go wobbly, George. And that's what kicked him into gear, Next thing you know, we send 565,000 troops to the Middle East. And beyond that, we had never put an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf before because it was deemed to be too shallow. Well, within 3 months, we had 6 carrier battle groups in the Persian Gulf.
Wow.
We thought it would be too shallow and they would be too difficult to turn around because they're so big. They need such a wide berth. 6 carrier battle groups in the Persian Gulf at the same time.
He didn't go wobbly.
He did not go wobbly. He blew it. He blew it later. You know, read my lips, no new taxes. Yeah.
I still remember the Gulf War ticker tape parade.
Oh yeah.
Parade.
Yes.
It was. I was very excited because I knew that this would be a good day to renew my driver's license at the DMV.
Smart.
No one was going to be there, and no one was.
Smart. No.
So wow, that's a great story, John.